Hello there, my name is Martin. I'm 37 years old and I live in Switzerland near the city of Zurich. Okay, things started to, let's say, take a turn into strange developments when I realized how far I felt from the rest of the crowd. At first I thought it wouldn't matter, as it seems that a lot of things don't matter, although they should. And so I hopped along as a child thinking that these doubts I had about other human beings were part of growing up. Well, as long as I can think, I felt ambivalent seeing those fearless people on the street and in public places. Normal people give me the creeps. After years of more or less voluntary observation of human behavior, I'd say these people have other things to take into consideration, and I wonder how that is possible. As a child, I was amazed by the sheer presence of nature and the powerful tricks this biosphere was able to pull off without us humans being capable of doing much against the outcome, aside from protection. When I reached the age of reason, that suddenly changed. Or so it seems. As I've mentioned earlier, I live in Switzerland. I grew up in a small town outside Zurich, and a few years ago I was offered a place to stay in my hometown, and I accepted the invitation. In hindsight, my childhood was a safe one. Looking back, I'd say that social interaction was always difficult. Today, I'd say that these experiences of me not being able to interact correctly with other human beings were the later breeding ground for SAD. So the development from incapability to fear was quite a slow one. You could say the preparations took years. Of course, because life does not become easier, the missing linkage to important values like group acceptance or a basic understanding of what I was supposed to look for made things worse. I'd say an important part of SAD creeping into my life was that you can fight fear from many angles. But if fear comes from an incapability you were born with, chances are such an unwinnable battle against yourself will inflict some permanent damage. Social anxiety increased my level of tension in any social situation. That might sound like stating the obvious, but that's what it boiled down to. As soon as there were people involved in something I was part of, I started to think of ways to get out of the situation. At best, avoid it. This urge was driven by the basic urge to avoid fear and the feelings related to that feeling. First and foremost, feelings of ineptitude and a strange feeling that people could see through me. Later in life, when I went into treatment because of these symptoms, I found out that I was projecting my negative self-image onto others in order to balance a broken logic I had made up for myself. That being inept was unacceptable and had to be avoided in order not to feel fear. Over the years, I withdrew from everybody, and when I attempt to make new friends nowadays, I get very strong feelings of inferiority. Well, I found that all attempts to fight the disease must go through stages of accepting the disease's presence. It is like an unwanted house guest that one has to get along with for lack of alternatives. It's very difficult to say if someone who saw things through the eyes of an SAD mindset will someday be able to speak a cure from something as profound an experience as SAD. I assume it's a widespread opinion that fear is bad. But I don't think it's all bad. No doubt that there are grave downsides to such a disease. First and foremost, the incapability to socialize, the overwhelming presence of fear, but in nature there is compensation. I, for my part, was never really friends with discos, pubs, and other places of social gathering. I don't drink alcohol, but if I did, who knows what inhibitions I'd lose. I say this because to me it was always a question what it was that I wanted to overcome. On good days, I put on a nice shirt and do my shopping, maybe go to the bank. And within time, I've learned to separate fear from disinterest. So if you ask me for a strategy, I have one for you. Accept and let go. My difficulties in social events, school and work were always fear-related, and up to present day I believe that the feelings of fear stem from my experience in childhood of being incapable to get along with other kids. It was this problem, not saying that my behavior was the only cause for it, but it was this problem that led to me going to a different school, a special school early in life. But I wouldn't say that interaction with other people my age improved much with that. Things tend to get worse before they get better. At first, when very young, I just got into trouble a lot with other kids because I rarely shared their interests. This discrepancy developed into somewhat mutation, where since I couldn't understand the gap between me and others, I started to generally believe that people do not like me. The group acceptance that others got, no matter what it was they did, so it seemed to me, gave me the impression that it must be my fault, even if it's completely unreasonable to think so. Teachers setting the pressure on me to change my so-called bad behavior did the rest. So to summarize my difficulties in social events, school and work, the events that I went through in school led up to my avoidance of social events, and therefore made it impossible to function at a workplace, which by definition, correct me if I'm wrong, is a social event in itself. So, only a few months ago, I came across a defining word for what I do to stay strong. The word is sublimation. According to Wikipedia, and I quote, "Sublimation is a mature type of defense mechanism where socially unacceptable impulses or idealizations are consciously transformed into socially acceptable actions or behavior, possibly converting the initial impulse in the long term." End of quote. Sublimation says it all. The socially unacceptable impulse is to stagnate because of withdrawal. It is a given fact that a human brain stagnating will go into rebellion. Anyone who attempted to do absolutely nothing, not even sleeping for just 2 hours, will know what I'm talking about. The brain always wins the conflict of stagnation by making you get up and do something, just like the stomach wins the quarrel of hunger. And it's an illusion to believe that watching TV all day is going to help. Without physical activity, stagnation won't go away. So what I do is, I channel my anger, pain and fear and my bad memories into something, and this is important, into something that I wouldn't have been able to do without the fate I was given. That is sublimation adapted to personal needs. So, I'm not saying think positive. Let others do that. I say sublimate the hell out of SAD.